it is just a profound, huge honor today to be podcast interviewing one of my brothers from another mother, Karim Khalife. Did I pronounce that right? Khalife?
That is just perfect. The honor is all mine.
Oh my God!
You're making me blush. I hope nobody's watching the video.
Oh my God! You have 16,000 posts on Dental Town. I mean, I feel like I know you from the inside out. I mean, it seems like I know every thought of every thought you've had. I mean, you can't read 16,000 posts from someone and not feel like you live in the next room over. And I also have a interesting, funny thing to tell you. You were born and raised in Lebanon, right?
Yeah.
And my name Farran means baker in Arabic. And before the internet was out and people see your name in print, in Phoenix, I always had all these Lebanese people driving clear across town for an hour thinking they found a Lebanese dentist, and they'd walk in the room and they'd see my white face and they'd say, "You're Dr. Farran?" And 100% of the time they were Lebanese. And when you study the name, almost like 85% of all the people with the last name Farran live in Lebanon.
Do you have, I guess, Arabic or Lebanese roots? Is that where your name comes from?
You know, I've been chasing down the story. I live in Phoenix, which is a lot of Mormon population, very, very high Mormon. And Mormons are very big into genealogy. And so I went to their temple, and a lady's been chasing a tree. She thinks that a Lebanese person migrated to Ireland several hundred years ago, and then, of course, slept with a few redheads along the way. And got me. So she thinks the name is Lebanese, but obviously the ancestry tree goes back to Ireland. So it's hard to say.
All right.
Did you ever know any Farrans in Lebanon?
Myself, no. When I was born, I was born at the beginning of the war, and the war was fairly nasty. So our ability to move from area to area was very limited. I was mainly raised by Catholic nuns and priests, and didn't know much about Lebanon, or didn't really know many people other than very close friends. And at around the age of 13, the war had gotten so bad, we just left it all and ran away under the cover of the night, took small boats from the coast, and didn't sink like many of those are sink these days, and made it.
And who was the war with? Was the war with Syria?
It's really hard to tell. I think
was it a civil war?
It was with Syria, it was with Israel, it was with, there were some American Navy there, it was France, it was so international, it's very hard to understand, and it feels like nothing's ever gotten solved over 30 years of fighting, and it keeps going on. So I'm just very grateful to be here, very, very thankful for my parents' sacrifice, and very grateful for Canada to take us in, and for the opportunity to become a dentist, to meet people like yourselves and other colleagues, and just have a life. It's amazing.
Well, I think people just don't think of how lucky they are. Like you hear people whining today about the economy, and I'm like, would you have liked to practice dentistry through the Civil War when nearly 1 million people were killed and we burned down the entire country? I mean, is this as bad as World War? You know, I mean, we're just so grateful. I mean, I feel spoiled rotten, and my boys are spoiled rotten not to have had to live what you lived through. I mean, that's just amazing that you overcome so much and keep so far.
You guys have earned it. You fought for a country, for a continent, and built an amazing civilization that works very well. Nothing is perfect. Anything can be criticized, but compared to many other places, this is a heaven. And I'm just very, very happy to be here.
Now, you were from Lebanon, and you said in the war the French were there, and you went to French. Are you in English-speaking? Are you in French Quebec, or are you in English Ontario?
I'm in French Ontario, actually. I'm exactly on the border with Quebec. You just cross a bridge, and you're in Quebec. So our area is 80% French, and I'm probably almost 100% French raised as well. Always went to French school, studied dentistry in French. So mostly I'm better at French, but as anyone who wants to be successful, I guess, a bit controversial, you still have to learn some English. So there you have it.
The only French I know is "Je t'aime, ma femme."
Well, I'll take it. That's a nice word.
Do you know what that? Did I say it good enough for you to know what it means? What does it mean?
Yeah, yeah, that sounds great.
What's it mean?
That's a nice expression of affection, and it works for anyone.
And what's it mean?
Very nice. It means I love you very much, but it can also mean I like you very much.
Yeah. Well, je t'aime ma femme, Karim. And
Moi aussi.
what's that?
Moi aussi, or me too.
Oh, that's a but really I think it's just there's so many dentists that came to the United States or Canada that just overcome such extreme adversity, whether it be from Vietnam or Lebanon or these war-torn countries, and it's just a great reminder of how lucky so much luck has so much to do with your success. You know that you're just born in a country that wasn't in war. You were born in a rich country with good education and internet access versus a poor country. I mean, when I go into some of those countries in Africa, I mean, a guy like me and you, I don't know if we could have had any of our success. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
and people laugh when you say, well, it takes a village to raise a child. Heck, it takes an entire country to raise a child. And so many dentists who think they're all that would have been nothing if they'd have been born in the Congo. They might not even be alive right now.
It's very likely that what you're saying is true. Certainly, and they say I don't know the exact wording in English, but in a way, adversity has a way of showing you who's the man and who's the coward. And it's not just a matter of being a coward, or it's a matter of being built in a way that you can resist the pressure. When you're at war, there's no innocence. You either survive or you die or you go crazy. And I did go back to Lebanon once or twice, and it's fairly obvious. There are a lot of people who simply just lose it. In the face of adversity, it's a real test of character. It's possible that having been at war for so long, for almost all of my childhood, I might have grown to be a stronger person, and that made me who I am today. But I somewhat disagree with the idea that it might be necessary for people to live in a phase of adversity in order to become survivors. I often hear those who are frustrated with international politics say that sometimes Canadian or American civilizations should experience war themselves in order to feel how it is and feel grateful for what they have. But my perspective is different. I think that you guys are extremely lucky for not having to go through all that. And in a way, if you're not grateful every day, or if you are feeling a little bit, if you take things for granted, then all the better. And I wish that my children who are born in Canada would be able to live such a life where they would never hear a bomb or a gun explode, and just be able to be so carefree and just enjoy their lives. I mean, there's nothing more beautiful than that, and that's what I'm striving for. I don't really care for perspective for my children. I just want them to be happy, to be good people. I kind of walked away from religion because of these wars and all these fights. I'm just teaching my children and trying to influence whoever around me to just be good for the sake of being good, and just be grateful for what you have, whether you know that there's hardships or not. Because there's nothing more horrible than being at war, for having lived it myself. I've been shot at with everything. Bombs, machine guns, snipers. Even the American Navy had its battleships shooting huge bombs at our mountains, and I was there. So I can tell you that if anyone can make it without having that perspective, that's what I'm aiming for my kids.
Well,
It's such a better life.
I'm just aiming to be like you when I grow up. No, I'm serious. So I'm not even kidding. I just think you're an amazing man. So what do you mean? You said you were raised by Catholic nuns?
Yeah,
And
because
my two older sisters went into the Catholic nunnery straight out of high school. So I apologize on behalf of my sister's institution, because them are some crazy ladies. But what do you mean you walked away from religion? What was the war religious base, and it made you more? Did it make you atheist, agnostic, spiritual? What do you mean by walked away from religion? Or would you rather not talk about it?
I probably don't know the exact definition of my current status, because I don't exactly know what each term might mean. But basically, I have decided that I no longer believe in a higher power, and that if anything, nothing should be sacred in a democratic society, because if anything is sacred, then it cannot be negotiated. And when too many things become sacred, you start to have conflicts. And we're starting to see that already. As we try to be too respectful of human rights, we allow whatever is sacred to anyone to become accepted as such. And you start to create social boundaries between different groups. So I guess my way of being is that I don't believe in a actual higher power that created us because there is no evidence of it for my own perspective. And so what I tell my kids is that we need to be careful not to decide that we should feel superior to others because we believe in this or that thing. We should just believe that all human life is sacred, no exception. And anything that comes in the way of that needs to be forgotten about, or we should educate generations against that. And in my perspective, that is what religion has done for too many years. It's very likely that some people benefit a lot from religion, and it's likely that it might be necessary. But my past experience has been that religion was a cause of so many horrors. In a way, people seem to legitimize their cruelty as much as possible in the name of religion. And we see it on a daily basis if we get interested in the news, in things that happen in other countries. It's just crazy. And it just makes you feel like you wish for the entire concept of religion to disappear and for people to start to focus on what really matters. And if ever there was a God, if I sound blasphemous to too many people, my take on it is that if there ever was a God, my humanitarian way of being and my desire to always strive to be a good person, to try to help others, to not harm people or the least possible or not do it voluntarily, then if ever there was a God, in a way there would be little doubt in my mind that I would be picked first to go to heaven, whether I choose to say that I believe in God or not. So my dream would be that one day the human race will mature beyond the need for religion, and that whatever it is, poorer countries, African nations, Arabic nations, men that think that women are inferior, men that think that they are better than others, men who think they are chosen by God while others are not, Buddhists who attack Muslims or whatnot, all of that has to stop. We have greater challenges that are ahead of us. And there you have it.
Well, they always say never talk about sex, religion, politics, or violence, and we just covered all of those. And that's why I call it Dentistry Uncensored, because, too many people live in a bubble and they get offended if someone's saying something that they don't approve of. And politically incorrectness is a problem. And I'm so proud of you for saying what you said, because in the United States, just like Saudi Arabia or Iran, it's extremely politically incorrect to say that you don't believe. And and there's many, many dentists who would never, ever admit to their patients or their colleagues on Dental Town that they no longer believe. And I had a serious issue with that. Nothing like what you lived through. Mine was extremely minor, but my dilemma is very tough in the fact that my two older sisters went straight into the Catholic nunnery, and my oldest sister just started her own order of nunnery. I mean, they're just very extremist people. And my little brother, I only have one brother. I have 5 sisters, 2 older, 3 younger. Then I have a little brother. He was born gayer than Liberace. I knew he was gay 10 years before he did. All my friends were like, your brother's gay, right? And I'm like, yeah, obviously. And the torture that he went through, and and he finally moved to Sydney, Australia. I mean, could you imagine having to leave America? I mean, just enough was enough, and he's so happy there. And I go visit him because so many gay people who were going to kill themselves decided, hell, I'll just go to the other side of the earth. And Sydney has one of the largest gay populations in the world, and there's so many people even on Dental Town who don't even think that it should be legal, should have rights. I mean, I hear dentists saying they should be killed. I mean, I'm like, are you kidding me? You're a dentist and you fix teeth? And you think like that? I mean, are you just batshit crazy? And
higher education, huh?
Yeah, and people who think that he chose to be gay, he didn't know at 4 years old what gay was. He didn't know what it was at 10. He did. I don't think he did. I think he was maybe 12 or 13 before it started to, But hell, he was 17 years younger than me. So okay, enough of sex, religion, politics, violence. Did you learn French in Lebanon?
Yeah, yeah. In Lebanon was actually an ex-French colony until late after the Second World War, when France was almost on its knees. They ended up giving us our independence, but we remained, being Christians, we remained highly attached to French culture. I guess it goes back a very long time ago. Probably.
Did Napoleon annex Lebanon? Was that one of his? Was that part of the Napoleonic Wars,
In
or
all honesty, I wouldn't know exactly when it started. I think it was mainly after the Ottomans.
the Ottoman Empire?
Yeah, when the Ottoman Empire broke apart, the actual borders. My understanding of the actual borders is that they were devised after the First World War, and that's where France and England had their influence in the Middle East, mainly in the modern ages. But our true link to French culture goes back to the time where Christianity was created, and then they had the Crusades and stuff like that. The Lebanese Christians, I believe, as well as the Egyptians, are part of the first Christians that remained there after Europe was sent back by the Muslim armies. So our roots go a very long time back, but I'm not certain exactly at what point it started.
Well, I probably shouldn't say this, so I absolutely will. But I've never been to Lebanon. But I have lectured in probably 50 countries around the world, and I've always thought Paris, France, had the most whatever culture, whatever you define culture. It just seems like they're just more into all the fine dining and clothing and bags and finesse. And I mean, it just seems like, I mean, and not to be rude, but like go to a farm woman in Kansas, or a 60-year-old British woman in Manchester, or a 60-year-old German woman. I mean, they're just slugging it along. They'll just, but you go to Paris and it's just classy. I've always thought Paris was the classiest city. In fact, I love Montreal, Quebec for the same reason. Would you agree that they're very into culture?
I, mm, yes, it's true that probably France and somewhat Montreal, or a good part of Quebec as well, might be more into refined stuff and less about the big and the huge volume and the rights and whatnot of the American way of life. But in a way, you always look at what you don't have and you wish for it. So what would be better is some balance. My opinion differs slightly from yours, perhaps, in the sense that I dream of being here. I dreamt of being here. I dreamt of being in the United States. When we lived in Lebanon, we had all that. We had the French culture influence, the refinement, the nicer restaurants, the fine foods, and whatever else comes with it. But whenever we came to the United States, my parents always sent me for the summer. We have an uncle who lives in Virginia. He's a doctor there, fairly well off, so he would take us into his home for a couple of months to get us away from the war. And every time we were to leave to go back home, I would tell my mom, why can't we just stay here? Why can't we just live here? So my point, I guess, is that what some people seem to criticize about the American way of life, about the lack of refinement and things like that, might not be as crucial or critical to a society as what some might make it. I am not at all in agreement with those who laugh about the American, what you mentioned, the typical stereotype, the person, too big, extra large, a bit rudish, not refined or whatnot. Well, you guys built the probably most stable and more fun to be in country on the planet. So we don't have much to criticize when we look at you guys. We have much to learn. Perhaps the French culture, with its slightly snobbish attitude, might need to tone that down a little bit and learn to, let go of some ways that slow your progress or make you, how to say, make you vulnerable to humanity's vices in a way. Am I making sense?
Yes, you always make sense. I'm a huge fan of your posts. So let's move it to dentistry before some of our podcast people are like, are you guys ever going to get to dentistry? What made a guy like you post 16,000 times since 2006? Why? Because so many dental towns, every time I meet a townie, they've never post. They say, I get on there a couple times a week. I lurk for an hour. I say, why don't you ever post? And they say, they're not smart enough to engage in conversation. They're not going to add anything. They're afraid if they post an X-ray, someone will make fun of it.
True,
How
yes.
does a guy like you? So, do you think growing up in a war-torn country, I mean, the last thing you are afraid of is that someone on Dentaltown disagrees with you because you've been shot at? So words are probably pretty minor compared to a bullet and a bomb.
Perhaps the answer to that question is that Dentaltown has helped me a lot. Probably same as most new grads. When you graduate, you feel and believe that you know it all and that you're going to be the best dentist. Then you start practicing and you start seeing failures. And all of a sudden, you're distraught. Your dream of you being the ultimate dentist is not happening, and you're wondering where to look, where to find answers. You start taking courses, and very often, many of these courses aren't controlled enough, I guess, and the content isn't exactly what you need to save you. It may even put you more in trouble. And I met a dentist who told me about Dentaltown as it had just started on the internet. I logged on and immediately found a crowd of people who helped me tremendously. All of my dentistry as it is today is radically different and light years better than when I started, in large part thanks to Dentaltown. And I just felt very grateful. I felt the need to give back as much as I could, and I also felt that whenever I typed something that would be wrong, there would be a lot of people reading it who would correct me and I would improve as well. And it's these two things that made me addicted to Dentaltown. I'm constantly logged on. I'm always trying to help those who I think I can help, and always hoping to get help from those who think that they can help me improve. And I guess that's what it's all about, right? As a dentist, you want to minimize your frustrations. You want your life to be as pleasant as possible. In order for that to happen, the basics have to be there. You need to be good at what you do. And Dentaltown is probably the only and best resource that I have found that's always there and always full of ways to improve. And that's where it came from. I stopped counting a long time ago.
You saw, yeah. I think it's funny. The thing that dentists fear the most, that someone's going to say they're wrong on something, is actually the biggest blessing. I mean, I've had a monthly column every month since March of '94, and I always feel so blessed because if I ever wrote anything wrong, I had all these letters telling me I was wrong, and I thought that, how cool was that? Because you talk to your uncles and cousins, and they got all this misinformation or outdated information in their head, and that's one of their biggest problems. And to have a mechanism where someone can say, oh, you say that's blue, but I think it's red, and to point out to you, and you're like, oh wow, I'm so glad that you pointed that out for me. Maybe it's a lot to do with humility too.
Yeah,
I really think that these dentistry posts aren't thick-skinned to the criticism. I think they're humble people who just like have no problem. If they're wrong, they're wrong. Thanks for showing me, Karim, that I'm wrong, and I feel so
that's,
much happier now that I see something differently than I used. Because everybody knows what they know, but they don't know what they don't know. Um,
that's it.
you have a lot of thoughts and views about the supply of dentists in going on right now, the addition of dental schools, all that stuff. Share your views with that. Share your thoughts and concerns.
Oh man, let's see where to start on that one. Well,
At the
basically,
very beginning.
all right, let's see it. Let's see it. When I graduated from dentistry, I had an extremely hard time finding a stable job. Even if I was being solicited by very well established practices, um, the dentist himself over there, the one that has the big name, had a lot of work and was very successful, but didn't have really enough work to provide a new grad. And that was very shocking to me. It took a long time. It took me almost 3 years before I could find an opportunity that could work well. And I literally felt like I was swimming in a pool of sharks, where I felt like these dentists were almost like sharks. I saw things that were so shocking to me that I'm used to now after 16 years, but at the beginning, I couldn't believe it. And it was very difficult to understand.
What did you see that was shocking you? Talk about those
Basically,
specifically.
to say impolite words, dentists were double-crossing dentists and shooting at each other in ways that were completely unacceptable. Myself, for example, I wanted to establish myself, so I was trying to purchase a practice. One practice that we saw, there was a dentist who declared that he was afflicted by cancer and likely to die in a few months and wanted to sell the practice. Long story short, he's still practicing now, and the practice was bought by a young guy, not myself, and one of his friends. We knew them well, so we learned the story later on, that the guy never actually died, and that there turned out not to be enough work after he weaseled his way back into the practice, and they had to buy another practice in order to survive. Another dentist, extremely well established, also seemed to be pretending, now I know, to want to sell his practice to a young guy. He kind of recruited lab technicians, went to their labs, looked at their stone models to try to find a high-quality dentist to sell his practice to. After a lot of back and forth, the deal didn't go through because it felt fishy. And eventually, I saw plans with his names on it in one of the big dental companies that were designing a new office for him. Turns out was going to be across the street. That kind of stuff. And there was a lot worse. Dentists who lost their licenses for all sorts of reasons, all sorts of pretending and lying. A dentist who got me to start working for him, saying that he was intending to sell his practice because he had lost his license. After 3 years of me working with him, he calls me one day and says, all right, soon we're going to talk about the practice sales. I'm ready. I made my last payment, and we're going to strike a deal. On the day where he had set the appointment, I walk in and I find 5 other dentists that had started working there. He spread out the workload. Turns out he was more afraid of the fact that I had been there for a while. That kind of thing, after 3 years of trying to work, is very discouraging for a young dentist. And that kind of thing only exists because dentists are hungry. And as long as dental boards choose to ignore that reality and try to find other false justifications for why we have problems in our profession, this will only get worse and worse. The Ontario Dental Association, in its last economic survey, which was published to dentists only who were members of the ODA, concluded at the end of its report that someone is sleeping at the switch. That was their actual wording. I mean, how can dental boards not react to that? Well, guess what? They haven't. They don't care. I guess as long as dentists don't mobilize, nothing is going to truly change. And in a way, dentists will not mobilize because they're under pressure to make it. They have huge financial expectations, which is normal. I have nothing against that. They also have huge financial burdens. And not too many dentists have the luxury to decide to become fighters and just lose it all for the cause. So what solution do we have? I was having that conversation with some of the new grads locally over here who were interested in trying to solve these dilemmas. And my advice to them was they had to take it public. Policies don't change unless governments are willing to change them. And governments are only willing to change them if the public pressures them to do so. The rich dentist is too small on his own to be able to do that. And there you have it.
And these dental schools, I mean, basically we've had pretty much no inflation since Paul Volcker raised interest rates in 1980 to about 21% to break the backs of inflation. And now looking back, obviously that was too brutal of a move. But we basically haven't had inflation. But you look at the price of dental school. I mean, they can just keep raising and raising and raising because they know they're going to get 5,000 applications for less than 100 seats, and every time they raise the price $10,000 a year, they have no change in number of applications. But it seems like these private dental schools just have zero concern of cost containment, and if they charge $70,000, $80,000, $100,000 a year, they don't even care. And these young kids are thinking, well, I'm going to be a sovereign dentist, so this is all good, right? And it's like, where's the stewardship of our profession to let these private dental schools get away with these exorbitant cost?
It's very tragic to see that. In Quebec, where I studied, costs are still relatively low, especially compared to the United States. But in other parts of Canada, it can get truly expensive. I met with a new grad from British Columbia who told me that her education ended up costing her $250,000. That's incredible. You don't have any experience yet. You barely graduated and you already have this huge financial commitment. Most dentists, and it's very understandable, will delve into overtreatment in order to get themselves out of that. It's very tragic. Most economic, if not all, economic indicators, according to any report that I've read, and I've read many, always tell you that whenever there's an oversupply of doctors or dentists or whoever else in the medical field, you tend to see an elevation of overtreatment. And it's very dangerous for society to think that by putting up more doctors on the market, they are going to end up lowering the cost to the patient. That just never happens, because the cost of the patient, as we very well know, is not only dependent on profit margins. Profit margins in dentistry are interesting, but they're only interesting if there is proper volume, because without proper volume, we all fail. And that's where we stand right now. Dentists seem to be artificially creating higher volumes in their practices in order to survive. The public doesn't see that because it believes what it is being told by, I guess, official channels, that these moves will inevitably bring down the cost of dentistry. But that's just mathematically impossible. The last,
go ahead. No, you go ahead.
All right. I want to touch on a subject that was very shocking to me because it happened recently. In May of last year, I attended the yearly conference that we have in our local association here in the French Quebec. It's a 2-3 day conference, same as the ADA type of thing, where we have lectures and people that show off their new products. And there was a lecture that was given by a panel of board members, local board members of the City of Montreal. Some of them were young dentists. One of them is well known on Dental Town, and the other one was in my class. I was so excited to see younger dentists becoming members of the boards, and I was hopeful that they would bring in their insight of the market and that they would help at least tweak the board's policies regarding these matters. But in a way, when they gave us that course, the course was supposed to be about diagnosis of decay. And in the resume that described the course, they were talking about how it was important to review with dentists how to diagnose decay properly in order to avoid getting sued for overtreatment. And their understanding of the situation is just that, is that they were saying that, in their opinion, they have seen a spike of complaints against dentists due to overtreatment. And that spike, they explained it as a lack of understanding of proper diagnosis of decay. That's what young dentists were agreeing with the older ones. That's what the panel was saying. It was a huge course where a room that was probably full of about 1,000 to 2,000 dentists were present. And that's what all these dentists were hearing. They were hearing the board panel telling them that the spike of complaints due to overtreatment was related to the fact that dentists did not know how to diagnose decay. I was shocked. So I went to these two dentists whom I knew personally, and I told them, well, how can you guys say this? How can you guys tell us here that we don't know how to diagnose decay and that is why there is overtreatment? Do you really believe that? That's really shocking. Why is our dental board deciding to be blind to the reality that there is an oversupply of dentists? A while back, it was agreed upon that this was probably the fact, and the University of Montreal had declared that it was likely going to bring down its number of admissions. From 84, there was talk that the number of admissions was going to go down to 70. When the actual school year started, we saw that they still took in 84 students, and now they're up to 89. How did that problem magically disappear? What are we gaining by doing that? What is society gaining by doing that? Why do we have to graduate so many dentists on one end, pretending that there is a need for them, and on the other end, we graduate hygienists, and we allow them to have the right to practice on their own, in their own practices, which will basically undercut the already saturated market for the dentists. And now we have mid-level providers in the United States We also have a form of that in Ontario as well. What is that game going to lead to? Who's winning? So hard to understand. Who's winning in that? The whole thing is going to just crash and burn at some point. Totally nuts. I don't understand it. Someone has to explain it to me.
So what other forms of overtreatment are you seeing besides dental decay, diagnosing cavities?
Lots of it. Any treatment, you name it, you got it. Perio disease, healthy people getting treated for perio disease. I have personally seen several cases where patients were told that perfectly healthy teeth needed to be extracted and replaced with an implant and a graft. I have also seen patients many times that were recommended to have a root canal and a crown because of a deep cavity that was going to cause an infection. And upon investigation, no cavity could be found. And these cases, many of them are several years old. They became my patients, so I have recalls to prove that I was not wrong when I told them that they had no issue with these teeth. That's so frequent, it's scary.
Do you think another one is CAD CAM, where when you were busy, you would just do a filling, a direct filling, but now that you're less busy and more competition, you're milling out a very expensive indirect same-day restoration inlay-onlay?
I think that is definitely the case. There is no doubt about it. There's also something a lot more grave is when it happens at the specialty level. I have seen actually, to put it in a way where, to give it some perspective, I have myself learned how to place my own implants. I have myself learned how to do gum grafting, bone grafting, sinus lifts, all sorts of full mouth rehabs and things like that, because I was having a hard time finding an honest specialist. It was difficult to do. I also learned how to do my own endo because of that. The patients would go to the specialist's office, let's say for their kid who would need ortho. They would recommend that the parent do ortho as well. Then the specialist would tell the parent that they had issues with their gums, so they would refer them to the specialist. The specialist would send me a sheet with deep probing, 8, 9, 10, 12 millimeter pockets needing bone grafting, and I would look at the probing and the patient would be upset at me. I would say, how come I have so many gum issues and you told me that I was fine? So I'd be perplexed. I would sit the patient down, start probing again, I would find nothing. All of the pockets are barely 2 to 3 millimeters deep. I'd be all right, maybe I don't know how to probe, so let's call the hygienist number 1. She would probe and find nothing. Maybe she's incompetent, let's call hygienist number 2. Same concept. That's totally nuts that this patient was recommended bone grafting, gum grafting, what you guys call, or what we call deep scaling, perio surgeries, all sorts of things, before she could have her teeth straightened when she didn't need any of them. It's not just CAD-CAM or x-rays. That's not what we're talking about. That would be not a big deal if that was the case. If people were offering their patients stronger, nicer, better quality restorations, so be it. They're more expensive, but they are actually more resistant and whatnot. They have some advantages. But when it comes to surgery, you're cutting a patient's mouth open. That's criminal. That's totally criminal. And it's happening on a daily basis in our countries. That's shameful. Then you get you get these inspectors from the boards that come in and tell you that they are there to ensure proper standards of care, and all they look at is if the cotton rolls are in a jar that suits their beliefs, or if your bibs are in a locked bin or whatnot, and if you're taking 16 x-rays during the root canal treatment, but that's not going to help our profession improve. That's ridiculous.
So do you think a dentist should report when they see something like that? Do you think they should report that dentist to the board?
That's a difficult question. Deep down, I would like to say yes, but I've never done it myself, and my preference would lean towards a no. Although not reporting might be seen as somewhat dishonest, or closing your eyes in the face of crime and allowing patients to get abused. In a way, it's true, but in another way, I wish that we didn't have to do it ourselves as dentists, as practicing dentists, in order not to create animosity between colleagues. There is enough animosity and competition between colleagues. We need to figure out ways to improve relationships between dentists rather than to create adversarial relationships, which is what we seem to be leaning towards due to how competitive the market has become. So I guess my official answer would be no. I would rather that dentists don't tell on each other. I would rather that boards become more effective at creating circumstances where this type of behavior would be minimized. And whenever they are witnessing such behavior, that they take actual action that leads to true tangible results. There are too many dentists that get caught, get punished, but the punishment is so minimal that within just a few months they are back on track. That's the real problem.
I think
dentists, yep.
Humans are so complex. Like I hear these dentists on Dental Town bad-mouthing America to get a universal health insurance, yet they don't provide health insurance for their employees. So it's like, okay, you don't want the government to provide universal health insurance, but you don't provide it for your dental assistant, your hygienist, your receptionist. That doesn't make sense. Dentists get very mad when the government checks and balance with a board, and they want the government out of their lives, but then they don't want to police their own profession. It's like, well, if the dentists don't want to police their own profession, then why are you mad at the government doing it? And if you believe that the government shouldn't provide health insurance, that free enterprise should, then why don't you provide it to your assistant, your receptionist, and your hygienist? I mean, the older I get, the more the only way I can sum up the planet is the surface is covered with 7 billion talking monkeys. I mean, at the end of the day, the only thing that can explain their behaviors is, they're no different than a dog or a cat. You keep thinking this human is this spiritual, made in God's image, and is logical. But I've lived half a century. I'm 53. The only explanation that explains what I have seen around the world is that it's just infested with talking monkeys. They're literally batshit crazy.
Can I comment on that?
Yes.
All right.
Are you mad at me that I called you a talking monkey?
At all, because I feel that way myself. You have to wonder who's the beholder of the truth. But here's the thing: a long time ago, an extremely wise and admirable man said something that stayed with me, and every day I remind myself of that saying, and it's so true. That wise man is you, Howard. That's not a free compliment. You've earned it. So here goes. The saying was that, don't worry, folks. You can always rely on human nature. That's it. That's the saying. Human nature, when people were panicking because of a recession or whatnot, that it was never going to become, again, what it used to be. You were commenting on Dental Town that dentists were panicking over nothing, and that people would always go back to their habits and to their nature, and that things will definitely go back to the way they used to be, because that's how people are. Now, knowing this, we know that not all humans are the same. Some are meant to be leaders, some are meant to be followers, some are geniuses, some are not, and that's the way it goes. Now, those who can be leaders are not many. Those who are brilliant are not many either. So the dilemma becomes, when it comes to what you were mentioning, that dentists are curious. They don't want to provide insurance to their employees, and they don't want the government to do it for them, so there's a dichotomy there. But in the end, that is human nature. People are naturally insecure. People are naturally scared of change. And people also naturally will not do the right thing unless they are forced to do the right thing. So we need proper policing, whether it's through a socialist system like the one we have in Canada, or a more free democratic system the way you have it in the United States. Either way, nobody will always be content or happy because of a law that forces them to do something. But down the road, if we do allow our boards and our governments to police either the profession or the whole society in a constructive manner, whether we're very happy about it or not, in the end, it leads to more positive results. And so, whose role is it to police the profession? Can we rely on everybody to do the right thing? No, we can't. That's probably the biggest fault of our modern society in Canada and in the United States. We have so many rights, and we expect everybody to be able to manage themselves logically according to these rights. But we're veering towards what we call, how, how do we call it? I forgot the word. When a society starts to decay, that's where we're at now. We call it decadence. That is the word. We are now at a point where our society is becoming decadent because we are so we push so hard towards the point where we want to recognize everybody's rights to do whatever anybody wants to do, total equality between men and women, inability of our teachers to discipline our kids in schools because of rights, inability to say a bad word to someone because it could be religious or whatnot. Everything has become a right, and everyone can sue for whatever reason. There is no limit to anything anymore. And we're seeing that reflect itself in every aspect of our society, whether it's because people divorce all the time, families break up, there's no order, there's no respect towards the police force, there's cynicism everywhere. That has to be curved down a little bit. In a way, who do we blame for that? Can we blame the people? No, we can't. Because people need limits. As long as you don't give limits to people, they will continue to behave freely. And the same thing goes in dentistry. No matter how well-educated dentists are, if they are not given limits and punishments for going beyond these limits, they will not behave. Same as people on the streets. You need cops to stop them from speeding. It's not enough to just tell them, hey, don't go fast, or to have signs, or to have red lights. If there were no cops enforcing these lights, nobody would stop. Or maybe just you and I would stop, and a few other townies. But that would be it. I don't think I would stop either. Probably I would keep going on most of them. That's it. That's
it's funny how normal depends on where you live, right? We're talking about the oversupply of dentists from dental schools, but the very nice thing about dental schools in the United States and Canada is they're very standardized. I mean, a car is a car is a car. They all have airbags, anti-lock. It's a pretty standard product. But when you go to Brazil and India and China, you have two different dental schools. You have the public, which is the old English British Empire, 4-year undergrad, 4-year dental school, 8 years of college to be a dentist like you and I. But then you have all these private programs that are taking a kid from start to finish in under 24 months. And then they both set up a sign, we're both dentists. And here Karim went to 8 years of college. And then here's Howard across the street that went to 24 months of college. And it's funny how history repeats itself because that was a problem the United States had at the 1900s. In fact, my favorite book on that was a Pulitzer Prize-winning book by, I believe it was Paul Starr, The Rise of the American Healthcare Industry, where finally in 1900, the government did take control, and they set up the state boards, and they closed down about 90% of all the medical schools in one day. And then you were going around town with saying you're a doctor with your lotions and potions made out of, they all had the same 3 ingredients, morphine, heroin, alcohol, and cocaine, and it solved everything from cancer to hair loss. And it was a big purge back in 1900s, and now here it is a century later, and that purge is going to have to happen in Brazil, India, China, and to some extent, there's the healthcare system right now, it seems to be on the top of the agenda of we're an election year. You guys just elected a new president, and your party swung from one party to the next, and America's in an election year. So how do you like your swing? You're not supposed to talk about religion, sex, politics, or violence. Do you like the swing that your country just made?
Oh boy. Personally, no, at all. I did not vote for this new prime minister.
And his father was a prime minister a long time ago, right?
That's it. I wasn't in Canada yet at that time. I was just barely born, I think, when his father became prime minister. So my knowledge of what he did is also fairly limited. I think in a way he was very liked.
What was it? Say his name?
Trudeau.
And he's French.
Yeah, Prime Minister Trudeau.
And so now his son is the prime minister.
His son.
So it's kind of like George Bush 41, George Bush 43.
Yeah. I'm actually shocked that he was elected. And when you ask people on the streets if they know what they voted for, most don't. Many don't. I was very shocked. I was shocked to see that my own parents, who are usually well informed and who have lots of implicated friends, are usually very knowledgeable about what's going on, didn't seem to understand what his electoral platform was based on. He's basically, we're at risk of getting totally ruined by this new government. His program is to create a $40 billion deficit for a $30 million souls population. That's a huge deficit. And I am shocked also to see that my own tax bracket is going to go down. As a dentist, with the money that I make, I'm expected to pay less taxes. Go figure. I should be happy about that. And in a way, yes, I do profit from it. But it will ruin the country.
You know, since 80% of since you're a dentist and 83% of my listeners are from the U.S., 17% are from 134 countries, but there's a lot of dentists out there. What do you think of the Canadian healthcare system versus or what they would call the socialist or single payer system versus the U.S. model? What would you like to tell the Americans who have not lived under their system? Do you think Canada's got a better system or not? Do you think the United States should follow Hillary and Bernie into a universal health care, or do you think that's a trading one can of worms for another?
I think your last conclusion is it. It's trading one can of worms for another. But perhaps that my opinion on the matter might be skewed. In a way, our system, it's a good system for the needy. But for those who have money, it's not a good system. My perspective of life is that I work hard to make money, and I am making money. I can afford private care. And when I go for private care, I get better service. There is no doubt about it. I've had an operation recently. It was minor. I tried to have it done in the public system, and I couldn't convince a doctor to do it for me because it wasn't life-threatening, and for some reason they were all tiptoeing around the issue, although it was extremely annoying to me and limiting in my daily life. I went to a private doctor, paid a lot of money for that. Within 5 minutes, she had concluded that I needed an operation. The next day, I was seeing a specialist who concluded that I needed an operation and who could operate me within 2 weeks. It had been years that I was trying to get that operation done in the public system. So the public system, in a way, has some major flaws that, if they could be addressed, would make it an amazing system. The issue with the public system is access to care. It's a real issue where a lot of people, myself included, cannot find a regular doctor as a first step into the system. It takes more than a year before you can find a doctor who's willing to see you as a new patient. They're working hard at trying to fix that, but it's not working very well. I guess it's very complicated to move an entire system out of its old ways. So from my perspective, I do prefer some form of private insurance where you have access to a doctor at least for the day-to-day stuff. On the other hand, when it comes to more grave diseases, our system might become better. Because whenever you have a life-threatening issue, if they see you before you die, then you're in good hands. And they treat you well for no money out of pocket, which is an amazing thing. But even then, our system has some limitations, where some medications are not covered. And you often hear people complaining that they have a type of cancer or whatever rare issue, and the government is not paying for their drugs, and they're not expecting that. So no one can fork off $200,000 for medication when they're not expecting to have to do that. So I don't really know if there's an answer to your question, Howard. I'm uncertain if our system is better than yours. In some cases, probably yes. But for day-to-day needs, I would say definitely no. I'd rather pay $200 and be seen on time in a clean area by a doctor who takes the time to speak with me and actually solve my issue, rather than be waiting in a crowded waiting room for hours and hours and hours as if time didn't matter, and then be told that I have nothing when I do have something, and I actually needed an operation. This is, when something is free, people perceive it as unlimited. And again, it boils down to the same thing, human nature. Everything has to be limited. Everything has to have a bit of value. Maybe a middle ground would be better. Totally free, in my opinion, is a big can of worms. And for that reason, perhaps your system might be better if there was a way to ensure that most people had some form of valid insurance, truly effective and useful insurance. Our system, unless you're dying, it's very tough to see a doctor. I don't like that, because not everybody's going to have a problem that's life-threatening, but it can affect your quality of life. And you need to have a good quality of life, or else what's the point of working hard? So now, as a dentist, I'm paying taxes, not using the public system, and paying immense amount of money to go into the private system in order to get proper care. It's not because our doctors are incompetent. That's not the problem. The problem is the way it's structured. You don't actually have access to them. So is that better? I don't think so.
So, Karim, you've been practicing a long time. I mean, do you care if I give away your age, or is that personal to you?
No, that's fine.
So you're the big 4-0,
Yep.
and the fans of this show are mostly juniors and seniors in dental school, or they've been out 5 years. I mean, almost 95% of the emails I get, they're not even 30 years old. And I want you to, I know that you are politically incorrect, or you'll just be honest and tell it like it is, but they say to me this. They say, Howard, I'm graduating $350,000 in student loans, and according to everything I read, I need to double my debt on just 3 pieces of an equipment: a $150,000 CEREC machine, a $100,000 CBCT 3D machine, and a $75,000 BioLace laser. Karim, does a kid opening up his own practice need to buy those 3 machines to be an elite doctor like you? Yes or no? Do they need to double their debt?
Absolutely not. Not
Talk
at all.
about that.
All right. My advice is what many dentists have given as advice on Dental Town to young grads as well. Keep your debt load as low as reasonably possible. If you need to buy an office, do so. If you want to start from scratch, do so. I would prefer buying an office. Don't buy any high-tech toys. Don't invest in any of that at all. Keep it as low-key, as cheap as possible, and focus on creating trust between you and your patients. That's what's lacking most, and that's what will impress people most. As you become successful and you have a true following, if you'd like to indulge in funner things because you like what you do and you enjoy what you do and you want to have more fun and maybe inject some fire into your practice, then by all means, invest into these nice toys. Patients will be impressed and pleased with them, but it will not bring you in more patients. What will bring you in more patients, what will make you successful, is focusing on building trust between you and your patient so that you could work comfortably with that patient and not be scared of what we often hear on Dental Town in the United States market mainly, the fear of lawsuit. Everything seems to be focusing on that. Eliminate the fear of lawsuit by creating strong relationships with your patients. That's what successful dentists do best. They have good relationships, or they create credibility because their patients learn to like them, learn to love them, and learn to trust them. That's what matters most. Reduce your financial pressure so that you don't feel under pressure when at work. If you don't feel under pressure at work, you'll be able to talk and just communicate better with people. You'll just be more comfortable. You'll be more yourself. You won't have any major, hurdles that you have, goals that you have to meet or whatnot, or all these things won't matter anymore. The only thing that will matter is that you and your patient be able to talk together properly, decide what his goals and needs are, and you'll notice that you can meet all of his needs and goals without any of these bells and whistles. I have them all, by the way. I have a CEREC, I have a huge office. If you go online, you can walk through my office. All of these things are in my office. It's a super expensive office. And having all these toys, I'm telling you that you don't really need them. And Some days I tell myself, maybe I regret owning all these things and creating all of that financial pressure. I do enjoy working with it though, and I don't regret doing that, and I'll probably not go back to working without them because I enjoy them too much. But when it comes to having patients, doing work, and whatnot, these things don't change anything whatsoever. That's it. That's
Yes,
my patient's
I
comments.
I think you said it perfectly because I have all those toys too. I have a CEREC machine, I have a Carestream CBCT, I have all the lasers, but I saw them as a Porsche for a rich boy's toys. I mean, they always
Yeah,
say you can measure a boy by his toys. They're toys, they weren't fundamental necessities. There's
yeah,
nothing wrong with a $14 infragram impression, sending it to a lab, and saving yourself a $150,000 CAD/CAM machine.
absolutely.
And who do you think would make a better crown? Your lab man or you on your CEREC machine?
Well, today, I would say myself on my CEREC machine, but that's after 16 years of experience.
Exactly. And it's
Give
like,
me my CEREC machine on day one. I would have been a total disaster. Man,
exactly. It's like buying a piano.
just thinking about it. Just thinking about it, I pity the patients that I would have treated with a CEREC machine on day one.
And look
It's
at
just,
me. I didn't even have the advantage of starting with a CEREC 3D Omnicam. I started with CEREC 1, then CEREC 2, then
hmm,
CEREC 3. I
even
mean,
more.
yeah. So yeah, so it's like buying a piano, and you got to learn how to play the piano. So did you hear about my dental student payback program that I started myself?
No, I haven't. Can you tell me about it?
Yeah, well, I have four boys. The oldest one did me good and got married and had me a granddaughter, but the other three aren't married. So if a woman dental student out there has student loan debt and wants to marry one of my three boys and make me another granddaughter, I'll pay off her student loans.
Okay, I have an offer for you.
Okay, you got
If
one?
any of them wants to turn gay, I'm game.
Oh, well, hey, Karim, seriously, je t'aime ma femme. I love you, man. I've been a huge fan of your 16,000 posts. It's so amazing on Dental Town how you might not see a person or get to have a meal with them or whatever, but I just feel like I know you from, I mean, like a sibling. I mean, gosh darn, 2006 to, no, 2006, 2000, so a decade with 16,000 posts. I feel like I know every core of your body. And
In a way, I feel the same way, Howard. In spite of everything and all of the challenges that we seem to discuss and overly discuss, probably, it's still a great time to be a dentist. We have so much available to us. We can do so many things. We can impact people's lives tremendously. And Dental Town is certainly one of these greatest tools, totally inexpensive for dentists, and nothing comes close in terms of its ability to provide information and help you become just a better dentist overall. So thanks to you, in a way, it has become for me an amazing last, I guess, 10 years since I've been on Dental Town.
well, it really has nothing to do with me. I mean, I just saw the infrastructure. What makes Dental Town is, someone else invented the infrastructure, but what makes Dental Town is townies like you who have shared 16,000 times in the last decade. Without you guys, Dental Town would be an empty website. And Green, from the bottom of my heart, like I could, there's probably like 100 people who are the core of Dental Town, and dude, you are one of them. And what a great guy. And thank you so much for all that you've done for dentistry, all you've done for Dental Town. And thank you for starting this podcast, sharing your story. You shared so much personal stuff. Many people just can't do that. Um, love you lots. Can't wait to see you next time.
Thanks a lot, Howard. It's a great honor. Thank you very much.
All right. Take care.
Bye bye.